Magazine Dreams, directed by Elijah Bynum and starring Jonathan Majors, is a film that dares its audience to look unflinchingly at loneliness, masculinity, and the all consuming hunger for recognition. Premiering at the 2023 Sundance Film Festival, the movie made waves for its intense physicality and disturbing intimacy. It's a film that generates visceral discomfort and haunting empathy in equal measure, and while it sometimes leans too heavily on familiar Scorsese like blueprints, particularly Taxi Driver. The result is still a gripping portrait of a man chasing an ideal that may not exist. Hello. Welcome to the channel. My name is Sean Morgan, and I love movies, even controversial ones, especially controversial ones. In this film, Magazine Dreams was poised to be controversial on content alone before any real life actions of its star infected the conversation around it. Let's dive in further. Jonathan Majors plays Killian Maddox in Magazine Dreams. Maddox is a socially isolated amateur bodybuilder whose life is shaped by a fixation on achieving stardom in the world of muscle magazines. He lives with his ailing grandfather, struggles with managing his mental health, and he navigates an often hostile world with an intensity that teeters constantly on the edge of implosion. From the very first scenes, Jonathan Majors inhabits Killian with a physical and emotional commitment that is nothing short of remarkable. I mean, bulging with muscle, but trembling with internalized trauma that you can just see in his eyes alone, Killian becomes an instantly unforgettable character, a man who is both terrifying and deeply, tragically human. This performance is the center of gravity around which Magazine Dreams spins. Majors trained extensively for the role, reportedly gaining a significant amount of muscle mass without the aid of prosthetics or I don't know about the steroid situation. I would have a hard time believing anybody could achieve his physique here without steroids. That's neither here nor there. Beyond the physical transformation, it's the psychological transparency that makes the character feel so alive. Killian speaks with this very slow, formal cadence, like someone who has rehearsed every line he delivers to avoid being misunderstood. His letters to various magazine publishers or idols of his, which he writes with increasing desperation throughout the film, reveal both his ambition and his fractured self worth. Jonathan Majors portrays all of this with aching precision, delivering a performance that is emotionally raw and disarmingly empathetic, even when the character's behavior becomes very, very alarming, to put it lightly. Elijah Bynum, who previously directed Hot Summer Nights, takes a stylistic leap with Magazine Dreams. The film is claustrophobic, it's intense, and sometimes hypnotic, with a moody visual palette that emphasizes dim rooms, harsh neon, tight close ups. Bynum uses long takes and very intimate camera work to trap us in Killian's world. It's a world filled with rejection, self doubt, disturbing obsession. The film owes an obvious debt to Taxi Driver, like I said before, particularly in its portrayal of a solitary, mentally unstable man who is slowly unraveling in a world that he perceives to be indifferent. And while the influence is clear, Magazine Dreams doesn't feel like mere imitation to me. It uses similar bones, but it builds something more idiosyncratic, and it roots itself in modern cultural pressures, particularly those surrounding fame, body image, and masculinity. The film doesn't shy away from the darkness of Killian's journey. His social interactions are marked by discomfort and miscommunication, whether he's awkwardly trying to flirt with a grocery store clerk, played by Haley Bennett, or he's attending a therapy session that feels more procedural than personal. At several points in the story, Killian teeters towards violent outbursts. Sometimes I wouldn't even say teeters. Sometimes, runs head first into violent outbursts. And Bynum masterfully tightens the tension without ever descending into kind of cheap exploitation, at least in my opinion. The narrative threads a very delicate line. We fear as an audience that Killian might do something bad, but we also understand very much the pain that drives him. That duality is the film's greatest strength, I think. And still, Magazine Dreams is not without faults. Its second half starts to drift into more episodic territory, which I didn't personally mind. But while it retains its emotional intensity, the narrative momentum becomes a little murky by the final stretch. The film seems unsure of how really to resolve Killian's arc at the very, very end. There are moments of like surrealism and ambiguity, including a late stage fantasy sequence that, may or may not be real. Excuse me. I don't think it's meant to be viewed as real. And I think that could alienate some viewers. The conclusion is thought provoking, but it feels more like a quiet exhale than a kind of cathartic crescendo. So, for a film that is so tightly coiled up until that point, I think that ending might leave some viewers feeling deflated. I felt a little bit deflated. You know, without spoiling too much, I, it did feel like it was it did feel like it was creeping towards a more severe, violent outburst than eventually happens. The film kind of has its cake and eats it too in that regard, and I'm still kind of parsing through in my brain what the kind of thematic purpose might be for making that kind of story decision. But I really haven't landed on my personal thoughts there as far as well. I'm trying not to be mean, I guess. I think that they kind of just wanted to have it both ways. I'm trying to be nice, but I think that's kind of what it comes down to. And another potential critique is how overtly Magazine Dreams does signal its influences. The comparisons to Taxi Driver are not subtle. It's got a troubled loner at its core. The setting is a little urban. It's a slow burning psychological descent, and there's even a climactic sequence involving potential violence at a very public event. So while Bynum's voice is distinct enough to keep the film from feeling downright derivative, there's no denying that Magazine Dreams walks a pretty familiar narrative path for those who are, for those who have seen enough movies, frankly. And this invites a fair question. Does Magazine Dreams expand on the legacy of those types of earlier films, or does it simply echo them without really adding much of its own sauce or much of its own idea to the mix? Is it in conversation with those films, or is it just imitating them? Um, I lean more towards that it's in conversation with them, but I completely understand some people who might just cross their arms and be like, "Seen it before, don't care." Um, the film also the film also became a point of controversy due to its star, of course. Following the film's Sundance debut, Jonathan Majors was arrested in March of 2023 on charges of um, assault and harassment stemming from an altercation with his former girlfriend. While the film had initially been slated for a wide release by Searchlight Pictures, the studio then shelved its release indefinitely amid legal proceedings. Majors was later convicted on 2 misdemeanor counts in December 2023, and as a result, the film's public life had been severely stunted, was severely stunted after that. It's a sobering reminder of how off-screen behavior can shape a film's legacy and can really complicate discussions around performance. This raises a thorny issue, right? How do we evaluate Magazine Dreams in light of Majors' real life actions? The film's undeniably built around his performance, and separating the art from the artist becomes a little bit difficult when that art involves such an intimate and volatile character study. Um, for many, the film might remain inaccessible, period, point blank, and unwatchable due to the events surrounding its star. For others, it may be like a vital, if fraught, piece of art that potentially speaks to them, potentially means something to them, and that deserves, to be seen and discussed on its own merits, without the whole asterisk of Jonathan Majors' real life BS. Um, I prefer to acknowledge a performance when it is good. This was a very good performance. Um, and I prefer to not let actors' personal lives influence my thoughts on the actual piece, the actual movie that I'm witnessing. In the end, Magazine Dreams is, in my opinion, pretty potent. It's a harrowing explanation of a man whose dreams just downright consume him. It paints a very bleak, very compelling portrait of American ambition, how it can uplift you in times of need, but it can also distort and ultimately destroy your mindset. Elijah Bynum proves himself as a filmmaker of patience and precision. He's not afraid to push viewers into uncomfortable psychological terrain. And the film does not offer easy answers or comforting resolutions. It just leaves this, I think, very lasting impression. Jonathan Majors' performance is without question it remains to be seen, I guess, what his career looks like from here on out. This, I think, is a career defining achievement, or it would have been had his career not really taken kind of this sharp, tragic turn, and seems to be stunted now, which, regardless of where one falls on the question of actor accountability, there's no denying the technical and emotional power of what is accomplished here. He crafts a character that is uncomfortable and unsettling. That being said, I don't mean to say that like he's so talented that he should just get to be in big movies from now on, period. If someone's a bad person, I have no qualms with them not getting to make millions of dollars in Hollywood. So, Magazine Dreams. It may feel overfamiliar in places. Its final act doesn't land with the same force as what came before it in the rest of the movie, but in its best moments, I think it captures something very elusive, something very real, the way that longing can metastasize into this cancerous obsession, how striving to just be seen can be sympathetic, but it can become a matter of life and death if you let it really, really creep its way into your mind. And it's a very difficult film, not just in content, but now in legacy because of the real life situation revolving around Majors. And, I still think this film deserves to linger, deserves to be seen a little bit. I feel compelled to recommend that people seek it out in despite of some of its faults. I think it is quite special. So where would Magazine Dreams rank on my scale of A-list, A-amazing, average, abysmal, or needs to be abolished? Well, I think that despite some issues I have with how things wrap up in the film, it still ekes out an A-amazing rating for me. It would be a very strong like 3.5 stars for me, like a very solid 3.5 if I had to choose a numerical rating. There's just something kind of magnetic about most of this film's atmosphere, the simmering central performance. Um, Majors obviously has issues, to put it lightly, but I cannot deny that he's one hell of an actor. There's no other way to put it. Um, but again, I reiterate, perfectly fine if he is a horrible person, if he doesn't get to be in big movies anymore, that's totally fine. Or if he doesn't get to be in movies, period. But what did you think of Magazine Dreams? Did you see it? I feel like it flew under the radar because of all of the controversies. If you did not see it, but you still want to discuss something in the comments, how do you feel about the exile of Kang from all of the MCU storylines? I am myself, I'm a big comic book nerd, so like I'm curious, were you into the character before all of the controversy around Majors? It feels like most people are kind of glad that Kang is out due to Majors' personal matters, lack of interest in the multiverse storyline, or both. I'm fine with, like I said 1,000 times now, I'm fine with bad people not getting crazy Marvel paychecks. But I was personally kind of looking forward to seeing what Kang, the character, ended up being in the future of the Avengers. It looks like we'll have to settle for Doctor Doom instead, which, hopefully goes well. The Fantastic Four are famously well adapted whenever they're brought to the big screen. I'm not nervous about the next slate of MCU stuff at all. But anyway, feel free to answer those questions in the comments below, or to like this video and or subscribe to the channel for my thoughts on more theatrical releases or movies that get added to streaming. Until next time, thank you for watching this video. Please do not develop a bodybuilding obsession and creep out the local cutie working as a cashier at your grocery store. She just wants to do her job. All right, bye.